Hello, everyone. My name is Laura Mutis. I'm part of JP Morgan's Global Philanthropy team. It is great to be with all of you today. I am part of one of our 4 U.S. national pillars that focuses around jobs and skills. In plain terms, what that means is that we work to get more people into good jobs that lead to upward economic mobility. Now, in the myriad of programs that we support and help develop to get to this mission are our summer youth employment programs. So we've been funding this work since 2013, expanded our commitment to 17 million back in 2017, and then most recently in 2022, revamped our commitment to 20 million over 5 years. So why do we do this? At JP Morgan, we truly believe at the core that supporting youth to get meaningful employment opportunities not only increases their success outcomes, but helps the workforce talent pipeline at large. And for the specific portfolio, we work in a twofold way. One is that we work with amazing regional program officers across the entire the US that are seeking SYEPs that are doing exciting work that we want to fund. And then also, we are uniquely positioned to take a step back and look at SYEPs from a broad lens, from a macro lens, to start understanding what are the challenges, what are the opportunities, what are the trends, what are the best practices that we can lift up. So for that reason, in 2022, we brought on board an amazing learning partner with us, MDRC, which we will hear about later on today, to help us understand and lift up these insights and do exactly what we're doing today. But before I continue, I have to give a big thank you to our advanced CTE partner. Not only were they be so wonderful in hosting this webinar today, but they're also a big partner of ours. They actually work with JP Morgan as well in a $50 million commitment centered around New Skills Ready Network, working with different sites across the US, bringing state leadership and other stakeholders to think strategically about youth quality career pathways. So thank you guys again for your help. And also, they have done a lot of research and work around SYEP. So we have a room full of experts around this. So for that reason, you're going to start seeing in the chat right now all of the reports that both MDRC and Advanced CTE has published around SYEPs. Yes, you already have homework after this webinar. You're welcome. Now let's dive into what this webinar is going to be about. One thing is clear for everyone in this room: quality career pathways is a challenging endeavor, one that has various complex issues to solve. But one thing is clear in terms of that because of that, there's a lot of levers that we have to pull to really be able to support youth at every step of their career pathway. And that's the role that SYEPs can go in and play to support in this continuum for learners. So what MDRC went out to do, and an example of our grantees from 2023, which were over 25 across the US, they spoke to a lot of our partners, they spoke to program experts and policy experts, and one theme came up both as a challenge as an opportunity, and that is the role that labor market insights and labor market demands can play in strategic thinking. And what I mean by that is that if a lot of SYEPs center their strategic planning around labor market demands, they're organically involving really key stakeholders. So think about your employer partners, think about a state leadership, think about your chambers of commerce, workforce boards. And not only are they involved in the strategic planning, but then when execution comes around, they are key stakeholders and hold responsibility in executing those plans. So we are excited that both Boston PIC and United LA, current grantees of our portfolio, are going to lift up the hood. I asked them, we're going to be vulnerable, we're going to talk about the challenges, we're going to talk about the opportunities, but they both have great frameworks in ways that they work. They're different in many ways, but really lean on this employer engagement and labor market demands of their local region to really do really powerful work. Now, you may be asking yourself, Laura, yes, of course, employer engagement, yes, of course, labor market demands, it's nothing new. But one thing is clear, that is absolutely easier said than done. So today, we're going to learn from all of these folks. As in terms of key takeaways from the audience in this group, For state leaders, we hope you leverage this conversation to continue thinking about the role that SYEPs can play in your long-term planning around workforce and talent pipeline development. For the SYEP providers in this call as well, you're probably in the midst of prepping for 2025 programming. I hope you learned some tips. I hope you're able to brainstorm as we're all chatting, and I hope you learn about collaboration and the importance of that, which you all know, but you're going to hear great examples from Boston PIC and Unite LA around all of this work. And for all of the education leaders and funders, let's continue to think about the role that SYEPs can play, strategic SYEP involvement in the continuum for youth quality career pathways and outcomes. So some housekeeping before we begin. There's going to be a Q&A chat at the side. We're going to leave some time for questions at the end. So please start posting your questions there because we're going to be responding to all of these at the end of our conversation. I will now pass the stage to both Unite LA and Boston PIC to give us a quick 1-minute debrief about their work at their organizations, just to make sure that we're all level setting. And then after, I'm going to take over the mic for a second and then push out the first question out to MDRC to get the conversation started. Thank you all once again, and now I'll pass it over to Josh Bruno, Director of Employment Engagement at Boston PIC, to share some of his insights. Thank you again, Josh.
Oh my God, thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you for the intro. I'm going to get right to it. My name is Josh Bruno. I'm the Director of Employer Engagement here at the Boston PIC. What most people know us for, and not only for, but we run the private sector component of the Mayor of Boston's Summer Jobs campaign. So it's super important. We have a lot of partners, private sector partners. Our gold standard is we want our 16 to 19-year-olds that are in Boston public high schools to have the opportunity to compete for internships and jobs. And we're in most sectors, but our biggest sectors are healthcare, financial services, IT, and STEM. And I have employer account managers engaging employers throughout the year with career exploration, school year jobs. We do a lot of skill-based boot camps during February and April vacation, and then obviously school year and summer jobs. But I'll talk more about that, but that's just my quick intro, and I can talk about staffing and other stuff later, but that's my 1-minute intro.
That was amazing. Thank you so much. And I'll pass it over to Bridget Netter, Senior Vice President of Programs and Talent Development at Unite LA.
Thank you so much for that, Laura, and thank you again to JPMC for your investment in summer youth employment programs in Unite LA and the work that we're leading here in the community. Also want to thank our partners at MDRC, Advanced CTE, and my good friends at the Boston PIC, including Josh Bruno, my sidekick here, for the opportunity to join today's discussion. So as Laura noted, I'm here with Unite LA, and for over 26 years, Unite LA has worked alongside employers in the LA community to increase access to high quality early childhood education, develop career pathways in high growth, high demand industries to really improve college access and success for young people, particularly first generation college students, and to ensure the workforce readiness of young people in our community, especially for those who are experiencing extensive barriers to employment. Some of our founding partners, which I think is really key for the purpose of the conversation today, were the City of LA, the Los Angeles Unified School District, the LA Community College District. These are all institutions that really remain strategic partners to Unite LA, as well as pipelines to talent in our community, especially those who are pursuing summer youth employment opportunities. For the purpose of our programming, we serve primarily 16 to 24-year-olds here in the LA region. Most of our program participants represent individuals from historically marginalized communities. They're both in school and out of school young people, typically first generation college students. 100% of those that we serve through our summer youth employment programs and career pathway programs are low to moderate income, and nearly 90% of them represent really diverse populations, youth of color. That's who we are. That's our work. I lead a team that is 12 and Mighty and Growing, which focuses both on the employer side as well as the youth side. We have an employer engagement team and a youth engagement team, all working together and collaboratively to really implement workforce development programs to help prepare young people for careers in high growth, high demand industries. Those industry sectors of focus for United LA are clean tech, healthcare and technology. For the purpose of today's discussion, we're going to lean in on the work that we're doing in the clean tech sector. Thank you again for the opportunity.
That was amazing. Thank you both. And then there's links to all of their work too in the chat that you can access. So please go ahead and do that. Now I'm going to pass it over to Yvonne Garcia, which has been a partner of us with MDRC, representing MDRC and the learning that we've been doing with the team. Yvonne, please introduce yourself and let's dive in. You have been working with us now for a couple of years, 2 years for that matter. We would love if you can lift up, those 3 main insights that you've gathered from the feedback that you've gotten, and also how we are landing on this labor market demand and insights focus for this panel.
Sure. Thank you, Laura. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Yvonne Garcia. I'm a Senior Research Associate at MDRC, which is an independent policy research organization. And as Laura mentioned, over the past couple of years, we have been leading, my team at MDRC has been leading an evaluation of SYEPs across the country. We've interviewed staff from over 25 SYEPs across the country, and we've also collected programmatic data to understand implementation, best practices, as well as challenges. And so I'm looking forward today to sharing some of insights from our national work and some of the consistent themes that we have identified through our work that are relevant to today's webinar include that SYEPs create opportunities for young people, especially in high growth, high demand sectors. First of all, by building strong relationships with employers through employee engagement teams, which tend to be on average about 1 to 3 staff members that work year round to target companies that value diversity and are willing to support youth. And these teams are also there to ease employer concerns about working with young people by highlighting the fact that they have been trained through the programs in soft skills and other skills areas. Another thing we have learned is that for-profit companies in high growth, high demand sectors may not immediately see hiring young people as part of their mission. So a great way to engage them is by offering them flexible options of engagement. So this can mean inviting them to participate in career fairs or job panels first before they progress to higher levels of engagement, like offering internships and jobs. And finally, a finding that led us to the topic of the webinar today is that many SYEPs use labor market data to make sure that their skills training matches what is in demand and helping youth build relevant future-ready skills. But not all SYEPs really have the capacity or resources to tap in and unlock the power of that data. And what we found is that that capacity, not surprisingly, varies by program size. So larger SYEPs may have more resources, are more likely to have resources and have access to labor market data tools than smaller programs. But smaller programs do tend to lean into relationship-based strategies more. This might mean, for example, partnering with industry associations and chambers of commerce to stay updated on trends and job openings, and building informal networks with local business leaders through networking events and to understand employer needs and open doors for youth.
That is wonderful. Thank you so much, Yvonne. And I think now we can pass it over to Josh at Boston PIC to give us a sense of how has Boston PIC gotten to their programmatic framework, and what's the role that labor market data has played in that as you continue to evolve your efforts and involving employers in the work. So how did the sausage gets made, for lack of a better word, to get to those priorities for your SYEP?
Excellent. Yeah. So we are really lucky that we brought over from Northeastern University our research and strategy director, Joe McLaughlin, who always kind of gives us new information about what are the hot jobs, what are the hot sectors, where are their openings. But then also we want, and especially the hospitals have been leaning into this, we want young people to go into the job so that the community they're serving can have people that look like them in these high-end jobs. So it's really important. Like we found out that, there are not as many nurses of color that should be in these teaching hospitals, for example. There's also a lot of jobs with techs that we should be having people, residents of Boston, young people of color, and you can do that with a lot of different sectors. We also have learned this from IT. We are part of an IT consortium that has told us when they invite us to events, look at the room, there is not much diversity in the room. And that's not even people of color, that means age, that means women. There was not as many women. I just went to an event and there was like 10% of the women that were in. So we're using this data to then inform us to then work with our companies and our associations. And we are also blessed to have a mayor that is really interested in youth of Boston to get them to be able to support themselves in high-paying jobs. And the first way and best way to do that is to get them into internships and jobs and get them excited about a career. Our executive director, Neil Sullivan, would say when we work with students, let's work with students, let's see what they're interested in, let's see what they're good at, and let's try to make that a career focus, right? So you want to be able to be excited about going into jobs and places. And when we want in the hospitals and these towers in and around Boston, we want the community to be reflected in these office buildings. So that's what we're looking for data. And it also, we have to be flexible. We've also learned from our IT partners that coding was very hot, 4 or 5 years ago, but now AI has come and now cybersecurity is more of importance, and they're looking for young people to fill those roles and things like that. So it's always good to kind of look at some of the data moving forward, and then see where we can plug in and have young people kind of guide themselves to try to figure out what they would like to do, and then have the companies fill us in on what skills they need to see these young people have and bring that information back to the schools.
That's amazing. And for the SYPs on the call, how does that also technically happen throughout the year? Is there a structure that you guys set up around we need to hear from employers from this section? What's the secret sauce in you guys making sure that on a yearly basis there's this well-rounded understanding of what's the way forward for the region? Josh?
So what we do is, and this is kind of a complicated answer because we're going to be all over the place.
I love it. Let's get complicated.
So what we're looking to do is we want to engage employers and figure out where entry-level positions are going to be. Because if a company comes to us and says, we want to work with Jamal, for example, Jamal's not going to be a full-time employee until probably 4 years, maybe 2, 3. But what we want to try to do is work with them to figure out where some of this labor market information is going to drive us and where we can have young people be part of this economy. Now, I know this is not answering the question 100%, but we are trying to get young people into high-paid jobs. I mean, just like LA, Boston's super expensive, right? So we want to have young people learn and earn and be continuous learners throughout. And for some young people, college is the answer. But we also are learning from data that we have the trades are also available to have really high-paying, good-wage jobs, and that we need to get those young people into the trades, whether it's in CTE. And I always tell this story. I'm a little older than most people on the call. I've never met a poor plumber, right? But we also, if you look, we don't have many plumbers of color, especially in and around Boston. So that's a missed opportunity. So I know I kind of went on a tangent there, but that's kind of what we're looking at. And Bridget can talk to some of her ideas.
No, this is great, and I think leads well into what we're going to hear from Bridget in regards to the same question, right? United LA has been able to narrow down to specific pathways, and it will be great to hear about how you guys went through this process, the staffing that was involved in all of this work, how you leverage state government and local government for this work too, as you guided your mission forward.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Laura. And then again, for the purpose of today, we're really going to really showcase and uplift some of the work that we're doing in the clean tech sector. And honestly, when I say United LA has a history of working alongside employer partners in this community for over 26 years, that is exactly where our work with the Clean Tech Academy began. The LA Regional Clean Tech Career Academy began. It began with one board member who introduced us to one employer in the community that really expressed concerns about the fact that we had so much investment coming into our community, investing in the greening of our economy, but was really concerned as to whether or not we would have the talent pipeline, local talent pipeline, to really meet the job growth demand, and really looked at Silicon Valley like as a, as a case study to say, we want to get ahead of the curve to make sure that we do have local talent to meet the jobs that are coming our way. So we worked with this employer for over a year. The particular employer invested seed funding. So obviously it takes funding to do this work whenever you're looking to launch new initiatives. It took funding. Our initial employer invested seed funding over $1 million into the launch of the Academy program, but we built this Academy with our existing team structure. And as when we talk about, the dollars, we also had to follow, to your point, the data. So looking at also working with our local workforce development boards, working with our local economic development corporation teams to really identify where there were potential job growth opportunities in this particular sector, were all part of, how we really launched the Academy itself. So it took $1 million investment, over $1 million investment from a private employer, but we were able to leverage that funding to really build a robust public-private partnership, pursuing state funding with our state, really our governor really providing mandates that by 2035, California would reach a zero emissions, leveraging funds that were coming down through the DOL due to the historic bipartisan infrastructure bill. So we followed not just the dollars, but also some of the data coming out of where funding was being invested into the sector. And for us, it's really been a focus on developing career education, paid and earned model. So young people are aware that they're educated about this emerging industry sector, that they're connected to leaders in the industry sector, and that they are provided with the mentorship, the exploration, the exposure to really get excited about the jobs that are to come. I will say just very briefly, one of the main challenges is that we're still not sure like where those entry-level jobs are. But the great thing about the Clean Tech Academy structure is that we
I think she froze.
Yeah.
Yvonne, do you want me to, while she's frozen, I can just talk a little bit about how we do stuff? I just think she's frozen.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you, Josh.
Okay, no problem. So just quickly for the group, I think what's important here at Boston that we've gotten is that we have amazing partners, not just employer partners, but on our board and council sits our superintendent of the Boston Public High Schools, presidents and CEOs of companies. As I mentioned before, there's representatives from the mayor's office that are helping us and then also the community colleges and local colleges sit on our board and council to help us talk about what pathways, what's working, what's not working, what also majors and how things are kind of pivoting. So I really like, and I know this is a cliche, but Rome wasn't built in a day. And we have this amazing partnership with all partners. And the PIC gets funding from the Boston Public High Schools, the state, the city, and then we have grants and corporate contributions and all this stuff. So that's kind of, I want everyone to realize that it's all encompassing and that we have a big foundation, and the PIC has been around for a while, but we are still trying to build that out. We're always looking for new partners. We're always looking to increase different sectors that we're doing. And now we're behind Unite LA, but we are starting a small focus group around clean tech energy. And we're hoping to build that just like Unite LA is. So Bridget, you froze, so I don't want to steal your thunder.
Yes.
And I'm not sure where I lost you. I think just, really in closing, just really wanting to double down and reiterate how important it is to be connected to employers, how important it is to build career pathway programs that are employer informed and employer led. And I think that is one of the real promises of the Clean Tech Academy, is that we have over 45 employers that are now connected to our academy, but they're working alongside our partners, public and private partners, to make sure that we're cultivating that talent, that we're really preparing young people for the jobs to come. And I think one of the challenges that I was just uplifting is that we're still not sure like what those entry-level jobs are, but our work is to really work hard and to advocate to make sure that when those jobs come, that we have a pipeline of talent really prepared to step into that. And then as a caveat of the students' experience with the academy, we work alongside employers to ask them to place our students into privately paid internships at the end of their academy experience. So we're seeing some progress there. In some instances, we're pipelining students into existing internship programs, and these are oftentimes internship programs that are historically set aside for like four-year college students. But working alongside those employer partners and bringing them into the academy, they're experiencing our talent, and they understand that our young people are ready and prepared and capable of showing up and working hard and learning alongside of them in their organizations. So we're also, as part of the employer engagement process, helping to really inform and hopefully improve how employers how they really approach the hiring process when it comes to entry-level talent for their organizations. And one of our aha moments has been one of the main ways in which many of these employers in this sector really experience talent is through internship programs. And that's really important when you're building a workforce portfolio, that first work experience, getting your foot in the door. And that's why summer youth employment programs are really so critical, and having employers at the table to help to work alongside of us to open those opportunities are up to our young people is really important.
No, that's amazing. I think the great example about Unite LA, Bridget, is that, like you said, it started with one employer. It took you how long? Over a year to get that started, and then now it has grown to X amount of employers. So the ability of kind of holding on and like looking long term and understanding there is an opportunity that's coming. Let's go deep into it, knowing that your staffing didn't increase for that matter, but you were strategic in allocating time for this work. Yvonne, I don't know if there's anything you would add to kind of what you saw across the board with SYEPs. They both mentioned kind of their staffing around employer engagement. So if you could provide also kind of like a snapshot of what you saw across the board too, and this theme also.
Well, I think one thing that resonates with our sort of learnings is that predicting the future of these industries 3 to 5 years down the line is very tough when employers themselves don't really know, also have that challenge. And this is something that we definitely heard across the board. And I think what I'm hearing from Bridget and from Josh is that really using the data to identify those sectors that are growing and are in high demand and have the promise of offering high-paying jobs to youth is important. Bringing employers to the table and really having them help inform decisions and strategies is also important. And also, I think more broadly speaking, being organizations that have a strong learning culture, because it seems like you both are really invested in continuing to learn and sort of going out there in the field and see what is happening and taking that back to your organizations and really making decisions that really help young people. So I just really want to say that what you're saying resonates with what we've learned about how difficult it is to predict past 12 months and the great work that you're doing to continue pushing that forward anyway.
That's truly spot on.
Can I add one thing too?
Please go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry, because I forgot to mention it, but we had a meeting yesterday in Boston with about 60 employers. We call it our employer network, where employers come together and share best practices. And then we also ask them, because people switch jobs and go to different companies, and we also asking them to bring on or give us warm leads for employers. So it's not only the hot sectors, but we want to be in established companies that will be around for a while, but then also companies that are changing themselves. And if we get a warm lead, my employer account managers and myself can go in and give them a menu of options, so that they, as we said earlier, it's not just about hiring for the summer, which is super important, but would you be interested in giving the kids a tour of your robotics facility? Would you be interested in having volunteers do a 3-day boot camp during February and April vacation? So there's a lot of different ways to get involved and kind of get people excited about things. And the best thing that we found is the large employer network is great to share best practices, but then organically what happened is that now we're going into smaller groups. So health careers are all getting together and they're doing their smaller group with the 11 teaching hospitals. And then financial services is coming together to do stuff. And then we're going to try to do stuff because Boston has so many higher ed institutions. We're going to start breaking them off like that. So people then can share real relevant information with themselves and try to figure out how do we best do this and how do we increase the number of internships and jobs we get, but also increase the quality of them as well. So sorry, Laura, I apologize. I'm just hopping in there.
I think you segued directly into our next question and the diving in part, which is like, okay, great. You know where you want to head. There's employers that are excited about this. They're moving forward in this way. State and local government is ahead and thinking about this too. This employer piece and kind of getting them into this, because as we know, and Yvonne can talk about this too, though a lot of SYEPs provide amazing high growth, high demand industry internships, that is usually not the norm, and it's something that is difficult to do. Can you talk a little bit about that, how long that engagement takes with employers to get them to that point, one? And then the second is that in the case that you cannot, employers for XYZ reason cannot provide those internships, I think Boston PIC has been very creative in expanding the services that an employer can provide for students, like you said, and the youth to have a really quality and wholesome experience, even if they're not getting the typical internship that we would wish they would be able to get at this early stage of their career path. So, and talk a little bit about what those challenges are constantly with employers and kind of getting that buy-in from them.
Yeah, so I'll just quickly go because Bridget and I talk about this. We've had a couple of calls over the past few months on how tough it is to kind of, you don't want to say get your hooks into an employer, but we have to really be kind of flexible. And then we offer them many different entry points into working with us and our students. So, we first talk about, would you want to host, whether it's a class that's a computer science class or a health class into one of your facilities. We also see if they have volunteers that would like to be guest speakers or panelists. Then, we did this before and it really kind of jumped off during COVID. We had these virtual panels called Meet the Pros, where people from different companies would talk about their job and how they got there. What was their experience in college? How many, there was one really interesting person that said they had like 4 different jobs before they found really what they loved. And kids need to hear that. And that, then we also, as I was mentioning before, we do boot camps during the February and April vacation, and there are many different topics, and they can be 4 days or they can be 1-day experiences, and we pay the kids. We have a corporate partner, Amazon, gives us a grant to pay the kids $50 a day that they participate. And it can be from cybersecurity, it can be from financial literacy, it can be from data science. We also, we're working with some other nonprofits and other higher ed institutions to get kids lab time, because they just haven't been in a lab before. So we were talking about pipetting and how to do the certain things. So this is kind of what we are asking. But I have to say that I know that it's November 14th, but in Boston, Summer Jobs 2025 has already started. We're already trying to reach out to companies, thinking about like, do they have the budget? Do they have the supervision? And you need two supervisors, meaning that you need a primary supervisor. The world of work's changing, right? Like we know that in IT, no one goes to work on Friday. They all work from home.
Right.
I can't have a kid at your office on a Friday by themselves, So, do you have a primary and secondary supervisor, thinking about hours? And we really have kind of changed our dynamic, meaning that we used to like, oh, we need 35 hours a week for these students to be at a work site. We're kind of not there anymore. So we're at like 28 hours a week averaging so that we can get as many young people an opportunity with good supervision and good work moving forward. And I'll hand it to Bridget because she has some good insights too.
Thank you so much for that, Josh. I think, right on what Josh said. I mean, there's a lot of hand-holding that goes on with working with employers. For the purpose of the academy in itself, it was an approach where we had to get buy-in at the leadership level, going to leaders of these clean tech organizations. And from there, being really connected to their talent development and HR leads so that we're really working directly with the individuals in these organizations that understand what the current and future workforce needs are and who are really empowered to make decisions about whether or not they can hire and what they can hire for in their organizations. And having dedicated staff and working with consultants, we had to even bring in consultants to really build that out because we had this explosion of employers in our network, but we did not have the staff capacity to really manage all of the employer interest that was coming our way. So the good thing is that we've seen a lot of employer interest, and we had to build out an academy model to really allow for that interest. And so you meet employers where they are. As Josh noted, some employers, especially those talent development and HR managers, they're great to come in during those job skills workshops and mock interviews to really help reinforce the skills and competencies that employers look for in the workplace. So that's a great way to bring in talent development people directly and align them in a role that's really aligned with their roles in their organizations, and to allow them to help cultivate and mentor your students. I think throughout the academy experience as well, we're tapping into different professions within those organizations as well. So we're bringing in professionals with different perspectives and lived experiences, oftentimes individuals who represent communities that our students can identify with or experiences and similar backgrounds of our young people. So having those that type of cultural sensitivity and that type of connectivity to our students is really important when you're working with employers, that you're bringing in employer partners and individuals, professionals that your young people can really connect with and identify with. And then I think the last piece of this, as Josh said, like young people being in those workspaces, being in those spaces where you have partners who are hosting your young people, they're able to go into these work sites and really understand the dynamics of working in an industry like this and having the opportunity again to earn and learn, so that the academy model is set up so that we're leveraging those public and private dollars to make sure that young people have these experiences and they're paid to do that. And at the end of the day, demonstrating to our employer partners, we're investing in the cultivation and the development of this talent, really making a stronger case for them to invest in hiring our young people for internships and entry-level jobs.
And it's so amazing that you bring up like the consultants and the role that they took over in that. So how was that decision making for you guys too? And what models do you create either for working with the larger corporations, let's say, or like the smaller, medium-sized businesses? And I think this is a question for you both too. How do you manage that audience and that sell between the type of corporations, and which seem to be kind of the most quick to kind of get buy-in from? And are there trends that you guys see that other folks could learn to get from you guys?
Here, if I can just go quickly, peer pressure work. When we had the one employer to invest the seed funding, this was the president CEO of the organization. This individual was really, after working with us for over a year, really tapped into their network, connected us to employers in their network, and then we were able to bring employers to the table from our existing network. So we were able to really create a community of employers that really cared about this and really rallied around this, and where you had leadership buy-in. So leadership and peer pressure like really works. Who's making that ask is really, really important. And again, having consultants to fill those the staffing gaps. We did not have the staff available to manage the employer engagement interests. So bringing in consultants to work alongside them, individuals who had worked in the industry, was really important. Our consultants were people who had worked in the private sector, and one of them actually worked in the clean tech sector. So having consultants with that expertise to help us build out that employer network was really, really critical, really, really important for that. And then I would just say lastly, like the future moving forward, given that we've built out this academy now and we've been able to build and leverage public and private dollars, we're now hiring employer engagement specialists to work specifically in this role, really building on and learning from the model of the Boston PIC. And so this is one of the reasons why Josh and I are constantly exchanging, email and, phone calls, because having dedicated staff to manage that this portfolio is really, really critical. Managing those relationships is so critical.
Thank you for that, Bridget. And it's amazing how you guys were able to evolve and pick it up. And Josh, what about from your side? Like you said, Boston PIC has been around for a long time. I think like the 80s at this point. And it stemmed from a workforce development board. But how do you see the trends of how you work with different type of companies at different scales? And what are the trends that you think it's useful for people to hear too?
Yeah, I mean, we work with all different types of companies, from startups to the large established companies. What we're finding is like the medium-sized companies are a little bit more flexible, and we have some better luck with that. But, if you're going to build the number, you kind of can't. You really got to take what you can get. And some of the larger companies might be able to do bigger numbers. However, there is some challenging aspects of it, and I'll bring on the O word, which is called the onboarding aspect of it. So, my team does employer engagement, and we have another team that is getting the students ready, which is super, super important. Like, we need to have our young people win the jobs in interviews and then go through the onboarding process. So that's kind of critical. I think it would be, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that. But when it comes to employer engagement, my team has been really good with seeing what the employer needs are, seeing what their staffing is like, and then also connecting them to similar like companies so that they can have conversations and share job descriptions. So if we have company X that says, oh, we couldn't hire a student, we'd say, oh, but your competitor does. And, we'll white out the names and stuff, but we're like, oh, and this is what they have the student do. And they're like, oh, wait, if they can do it, and so then we kind of share that information. And also there are some of our employers that are so dedicated, they'll say, listen, we know you need more employers. Why don't you have, so-and-so from this company call me, and I can tell them how I get through the HR process or how I have a timeline. So we'd like to really share that. I mean, like peer-to-peer is super important. And the last thing I would say is that we always try to send at least 2 students to each work site, because students are more comfortable in pairs. And I think it would and it's better to, also latch on to some of the companies that have college internships. So if you can have a college kid, you can have a 17 or 18-year-old junior or senior who's already had an internship and job before, just kind of piggyback on this. So I think I never hear no. I know this is like me being like crazy. I always hear not yet. And when a company says no, I'm like, oh, okay, like I'll call you in a month. I never hear no straight out. And then we try to just give them as many tools as we can so we can get them to some kind of a yes.
I'm hearing peer pressure and hustle, everyone. Those are the key themes of today's conversation. Yvonne, I think also looking at it from a larger lens and the themes that both Josh and Bridget have brought up. What are kind of those challenges that you guys see also, and any additional examples that are interesting to like the work that Bridget did with the one employer that you would think would be useful to lift up right now too?
Yeah, so real quick, because I know we are running low on time, but I will say that a lot of the themes that we learned through our work have, Josh and Bridget have lifted up. It is difficult sometimes for programs to make inroads in certain industries like trades and tech because they require a lot of skill development from youth. And so programs like McCormick in Chicago and other programs like I think Boston Pick as well, use the opportunity in the summer and other times of the year to really kind of build skills, like hard skills with youth. So McCormick, for example, focuses on coding. And so that's a way to, focus for them. It's focusing less on the sort of job placement, internship placement, and more on that skill building. But there is opportunity to do that also throughout the year and then use the summer for internships and jobs. I think the other thing real quick is, again, we can underscore or emphasize more the importance of building strong relationships with employers and how important that is. But I think at the same time, being transparent with employers about the level of commitment that it takes to really support youth to develop these skills and to help them sort of make inroads in these career pathways that are growing is really important. And programs do this by, for example, creating playbooks and other resources that really kind of help employers understand how to best support young people. And so just to just wrap it up, it's about supporting young people, but it's also about supporting their employers. And so it's really those two things that really kind of create high quality experiences.
Thank you so much. And of course, we always run out of time with these conversations, but something I want to lift up before we pass it over to Advanced CT. Bridget and Josh, you guys have such an amazing dynamic, and I think it's another key part of this work. We know this work is tough. We know it takes a lot of work and, like you said, a lot of peer pressure. But that collaboration in separate conversations with you both, and for the audience in the group, we didn't know this group had such a wonderful chemistry and had been working together for so long. Can you speak about one thing that you guys have learned from one another? And sorry to put you on the spot. This is not part of the questions that we prepped for. One of the things that you learn from one another in your work and kind of that importance of that collaboration and calling one another SYEPs to one another, hey, like this is what I'm struggling with and how they can help.
Okay, Josh, you've got to let me go first. One thing I've learned from Josh is that you don't go to Boston in December because there's very likely to be a nor'easterner happening in the region during that time. But I think seeing the work on the ground, understanding the dynamics of how work is implemented on the ground. So we talked a little bit about how obviously there is this exchange, but we've actually shown up in person. I've been able to, my team has been able to visit the Boston Pick, shadow Josh and his team and the work that they're doing on the ground there, visit some of the schools that they're working with, experience the talent, how the work is being done. So really just establishing that professional community of practice where there is continuous learning. When I first came into this world, that was one of the first things that I did. I was had the privilege of being connected to the Boston Pick and Josh and his team there. So, and I would say, the one thing that I've learned is that like every employer, every employer can be different. And you have to really make sure that when you're working with employers that you're really listening to employers and you're able to solve for their pain points. That's really key to bring employers in. The ability to listen to employers and understand like their pain points and understand their capacity is really critical in how you really engage them and bring them into your program. So the listening and learning from employers is really, really a critical part of the employer engagement process. Josh, I'm now going to defer to you, my friend.
Yeah, and we've been to LA too, and also just learning about really being clear with like marketing and one pagers. And, Bridget, she has a team, and I was like, wait, we need stuff like this. Like, we didn't have to kind of reinvent the wheel. So that we, Bridget's like, use whatever you want and slap your logo on it, or hey, can we use this? So it's like always exchanging them ideas, and especially when they're going to be way ahead of us in clean tech. But I'm going to lean on Bridget because it's going to move east. Right. And we're hoping, our state and our city are really into the clean tech space. We're not there yet, but we're going to have Bridget take the lumps first, and then we're going to like kind of pick her brain about that. And we can do that in other sectors.
That is amazing. And we look forward to continuing to see the work that you guys do together, and learning from one another. And I think that's a big learning, the fact that there's so many SYEPs out there doing similar work in different contexts. So there's so much that you guys can learn from one another. So very excited about that. We'll pass it over now to Stacy Whitehouse. She is the Associate Director of Communications with Advanced CTE. And we've learned so many good tips and when thinking about employer engagement, but SYEPs are also like part of this broader landscape when thinking about the roles that states can play and should play in the development and efficacy of this work. So can you give us some thoughts in regards to this, and what you guys are seeing in terms of SYEP's strength and scaling?
Thanks, Laura, and thanks to everyone for all their insights that they gave this afternoon. I love just the reinforcement of there's a lot of asks out there, and I think that a lot of things that companies and even y'all as intermediaries get asked, and so the state can play a really important role as kind of being that train conductor in a sense of knowing what's going on with all those asks, but you all are doing wonderful work in your cities, and the state can also help to build connections and to scale up SYEPs in a variety of ways. So I would say some of the top areas where that can happen is being an information hub. We don't want to recreate the wheel. So how, for example, can we use things that the Boston PIC or Unite LA have done and scale up so when other folks are getting started, they have that initial guidance. There could be templates, maybe even convening spaces for SYEPs throughout a state to meet, so they can get that guidance right when they're starting off the bat and doing their own experiences. It's also really important that SYEPs are known not only in the education space, but as folks said, like across the employer space. And there's so many agencies, governor offices, and folks that SYEPs advance a lot of different policy goals of a lot of different people. And so states can be that connector of making sure all those actors know what is happening in the state on that side, as well as a larger menu that folks such as PIC and other intermediaries are offering, and just that often opens the wider door of the other piece, which is funding. Because if there's more folks that are aware of it, then there's more opportunities to braid funding for eligibility for SYEPs, for removing the barriers that some folks may face to getting paid or how to have certain parts of experiences funded or even scaling up. I know, Bridget, I think you mentioned in our previous conversations that y'all use state funding to fund additional staff. So they can be a really good capacity builder in that regard when that is known. And then I think finally, just as a bit of a selfish point, because we work on career technical education specifically, but the curriculum side of things, that hopefully SYEPs are part of that larger work-based learning continuum, and the high quality experiences should be connecting back to classroom instruction and connecting the skills that are learned in the classroom to those experiences, but then also how they take what they learn back to the classroom and make sure it builds on each other or other experiences that they have when they're in a school, an institution, a workforce program, however they are participating. So the state can be a really great connector in that course sequencing and standards and all those things, and finding how SYEPs embed themselves into that larger landscape. So I know I want to make sure we have time to get questions, but I think the state overall can just serve as the connector and the bridge builder, and making sure that it's a cycle of learning and not a standalone experience, as I know has been lifted up today. So thank you so much for having me. And I know our resource was put in the chat earlier that we also had a chance to talk to great SYEP programs as part of the New Skills Ready Network that we were doing and lift up some good practices that I hope folks will take a look at.
Thank you so much, Stacy. And that's absolutely right. I think as SYPs continue to think of states, think of employers, and all of these type of stakeholders as key components of their work, I think the more progress and more scaling that you are able to see and also support, because it is tough work. And going to a lot of the questions that we have here in the chat. It's kind of questions like, okay, how do we get employers to be okay with having someone younger than 18 to come into the office? So would love either Josh or Bridget. There's a question here from Chrissy that talks a little bit about, is there a good HR related training that you are all aware of towards secondary students that may be done in the classroom in advance of going into their experience? And I think that question kind of percolates also into thinking, what training do the students need to be able to go into an employer and be successful in their experience there? So we'll love your guys' input.
Yeah, I would just say that's really an important element. We do use a tool internally. It's called Workforce Ready for the development of those essential soft skills. And that's really supplemented by a lot of mentoring and coaching from our HR employers and our employer partners in community. So right on, I can't emphasize enough how important the essential soft skills training component is, and our tool is Workforce Ready. We can definitely share more about that, but it's a tool that allows young people to become interview ready, job ready, career ready, application ready, interview ready, job ready, and career ready. It's a 4-component job skills training virtual program.
And for our younger kids, we use something called Signal for Success. And you can find that. I can also later on throw it in. And it just basically does the same thing that Bridget mentioned, is that we're trying to get the kids thinking about getting interview ready, how to research a company, how to dress for success. We've had to change because about half of our interviews now are on Zoom. And for some kids, we have to have them think about like what's going on in the background and, do you have internet access? And, should you do it at school or come to the PIC office? So, and then for our older kids, we do workshops either in the classroom during their advisories, or we do stuff after school. And then we are always just kind of building on that. So we, talking about, interview ready, dress for success. We also have like a little bit of a training around onboarding. What documents do you need? Do you have a bank account? Things like that. And the financial literacy as well.
And a quick follow-up question on that. People are asking also about requirements and concerns like background checks or other requirements for employers. Any tips around that as well?
Yeah, so we're very upfront. What I forgot to mention is we do sector preview days for our big internship and job program. So for healthcare, we'll have the 11 employers virtually come on. There'll be about 270 young people log on to learn about the opportunities, and they'll talk to the students about, okay, you'll have to have a background check, you'll need your I-9 information. In our financial institutions, you even have to get a financial report. They do, a criminal SORI and things like that. So we're very upfront about that so the students know. And then sometimes, depending on the kid's age, we might need a parent signature. So we try to put all of that up front, and we have our career specialist working with the students, talk to the students about that before we send them in.
This is fantastic, and I wish I could get to all of the questions. I think one last one here that I think it's relevant is thinking about skills traits education training. Can you guys talk a little bit more about the opportunities of SYPs also with skilled traits?
Yeah, I think one of the lessons that we're learning from employers, particularly in all of our sector programs, is the need to build in more hard skills training into our paid earn and learn models, into our work-based learning programming. So with all of our programming, be it clean tech, healthcare, or technology, we're partnering with our community colleges and training providers in the community to bring in the the skilled training component, be that OSHA, be it Green Pro, if it's clean tech, cybersecurity. We're partnering with training providers to make sure that we're also building in the essential skills piece, and not just the essential skills piece, but the hard skills piece, aligned with those industry sectors as well. So I think that's really important. So look for training providers, community colleges, other training providers in your community aligned with industry sectors that are emerging in your communities.
And
Thank you
I'll
so
be quick about ours. We do for internships in Boston, some of the internships, depending on sector, they'll have professional development on Friday. So it doesn't matter what company you work for, some company will host and they'll rotate. So it's not as big of a lift for companies. But we do this with the Boston Society of Architects on Friday. They'll do hard skill training so that kids from all the firms will come together to get some training. Whether it's around technology or whatever it might be, so that we do that during the summer as well. But the training is key. And financial institutions do it as well during our financial literacy piece too.
Yeah.
We'll do 1 or 2 trainings a summer.
And if I could just add one more element, another training, another competency that we're hearing from employers is the ability for young people to show up to be really efficient with technology. So incorporating things like training on Excel and PowerPoint and Word into your summer youth employment programs, those are all really important in terms of helping to prepare your talent to have successful and positive experiences in the workplace, being able to navigate and utilize those technology tools in the workplace.
This is amazing. You all are really a wealth of knowledge and great tips. And for the questions we didn't get to, hey, you guys have these people's names. Go look them up in LinkedIn. Peer pressure to get those answers to the questions we didn't get to. And I'll pass it over really quickly to Yvonne to share about what's coming up with MDRC with some material that she's been working with on.
Yes, thank you, Bridget, Josh. This has been great, and Stacy as well. Just want to give a quick plug. MDRC, we're working on a brief that will come out in 2025 about high quality components of SYEPs. So just wanted to plug that and be on the lookout, and we'll, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. MDRC has been wonderful in sharing out insights. Advanced CTE, thank you for being such a great partner to us. And United Lay, Boston Pick, Josh, Bridget, Geraldine, thank you all so much for joining us, for sharing your thoughts. Your time is valuable, and we really appreciate you all. Thank you, and continue doing this important way. We really appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
opportunity. And again, Geraldine Hamarena, who leads our LA Regional Clean Tech Career Academy, on with us today. I know she was experiencing some tech challenges, but just really want to acknowledge all of her leadership and her hard work in this space as well. Again, thank you for the opportunity to join you for the conversation today.
Of course. And the one question, yes, this has been recorded, so you guys will get access to the replay. Thank you all, and have a great afternoon, everyone.
Good luck, everyone. Thank you.